Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network, presented to you by Bet365. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me, as always, are BJ Cunningham and Anthony DeBundo. Together, the three of us will break down the upcoming quartet of Champions League quarterfinal matches, the second legs, on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we can touch a little bit on Europa League. But before we do that, 30 seconds each on what we saw today in the Premier League. We'll start with you, BJ. Arsenal losing to Villa, Liverpool losing to Crystal Palace, City on their way to a second consecutive treble. Unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, the way that people are talking right now, it seems like City has already been crowned champions, right? Like the title race is over just because Arsenal dropped a couple points here and there. Yeah, the fortress crumbled today, Michael. That was stunning to see. You called that.
Yeah.
Congratulations, nice call. But no, Arsenal's performance, and we'll get into it here in a little bit, but they played really well for the first 60 minutes and then just lost control. And that's one of the few times that I've seen them actually do that this season. I don't think it's a trend or something that's going to continue to happen, especially once we get to this Bayern Munich match. But I think everybody, as we'll get to as well, but I think you're naive to say that City's just going to easily go right to the title. I think this title race is still very, very much on.
So the updated title odds, City minus 225, went from plus 200 2 weeks ago to minus 225 in 2 weeks. It was so perfect because I was kind of dreading having to come on this pod because I knew I'd watched the walls of Anfield come tumbling down today. Thursday at Atalanta, I think, kind of laid the groundwork and exposed the cracks in their defensive fortitude. And they created over 3.5 XG. Nobody can deny that Liverpool is very good at creating chances, but ultimately it is their defense that has kind of done them here. They concede 2 to United to drop points. They only ended up giving up 1 to Palace, but really it should have been 2. Palace had numerous chances to double their lead there, but I'm sad that the fortress has crumbled. I know it's been a running thing on this show, and I think when we look at the remaining matches, Tottenham away and Villa home. Like, what's left on the City schedule here? It's Tottenham away, right?
You could lose to anybody.
But that's
Arsenal,
the beauty of it. True.
Right,
Liverpool
Brighton
lost to
away.
Palace, Arsenal lost to
their
Villa.
next Premier League match.
Yeah, and I think my prediction, we'll move on right after this because we are a betting podcast, is that all 3 teams will still drop points between now and then, and I know that's more likely than not, but I think that's how I'll look at it. Okay, that's in the rear view. Now we look ahead. We look ahead to Tuesday. I will start with Barcelona and PSG. This one in Barcelona and Camp Nou. The home team, they are plus 125 favorites. PSG traveling at plus 195. The draw here is plus 285. These odds from Bet365. So are the to advance line, which has Barcelona as a prohibitive minus 425 favorite with a 3-2 lead. PSG plus 320 to advance. Anything interests you here, Anthony?
Well, so, the first leg, the total took a ton of money, and I kind of held my nose and played the under 3. And let's just say that was wrong, way wrong. But I think
there was a lot of that on our last podcast. There was a lot of totally wrong stuff. Hands up. We made up for it this weekend.
The Champions League was rough. Yes.
Yeah.
Outside of Atleti, God bless them.
Yes.
But job's not done. I will say, if you had to pick the match that was going to be the most open back and forth, it was very obviously PSG and Barca because neither of these teams really have defensive midfielders. And it just ended up being the basketball match that we, kind of hoped for. It was very different than Real Madrid City, even though both games had 5+ goals. Even Arsenal Bayern, very different than that way the PSG Barca played out. My thing is, so Barca comes home with the lead. Are they able to slow it down? I really don't think so. I don't think the way that this team is built, given their lack of midfield ball winning, and it's really been a problem since Gavi went out months ago. It's what I think ultimately led to their defensive numbers taking such a fall. What is to stop PSG in this match? And Barca for that matter. Because, the total is a little over 3 now. I have it right around 3, so I'm not like running to the window to bet the over. But to me, I just don't think Barca is all that capable of playing a style to kill off a game. This is not, an Atleti where they can put numbers behind the ball. This is not even a good defensive team right now, Barcelona. Even though they're now the favorites to make the final, I just don't trust them. And it was a very quiet Mbappe game in Paris last week. I mean, we don't know. I mean, but there's nothing stopping Mbappe in this Barca team. When you look at how they're designed, I thought it was interesting, right? They came out first match, they go up a goal at half. Second half, they actually tried to sit off a little, and it was a disaster. They were not able to keep control of the match. PSG hit them bang, bang, quick, quick, and then Barca was like, oh, that's not going to work. We have to go back on the attack, and they ultimately, turned the match around. But their complete inability to absorb any pressure at all does not bode well for them as a favorite already holding a lead in the aggregate. So I definitely can't take Barca here. I have a pretty strong lean to PSG. It's kind of like what we said on last week's pod where we were like, look, I don't know that there's a huge gap between these two teams as currently constructed. So I'm willing to play Barca plus a half at PSG. And I'm kind of saying, hey, like PSG plus a half at Barca. It's not quite a half, so it is a little different. It's more of a quarter. But PSG plus a half at Barca, I'd probably play that too and just say, like, this match ends in a draw a lot of the time, and regardless of where they play it, just because of how little both teams can control it, that for me, it would be PSG or nothing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Thinking about maybe both teams score over 2.5, something like that. Because Anthony's right. When you walk away from that match, or something that I took away from the match is, what Barcelona should do for the next week is just practice blocking shots, because they are so bad at defending in the box, and there was so many instances where they were just a half second late on one of PSG shots, and the shot goes in. Even the first goal from Dembele was really a low quality chance, but Barcelona did a poor job of closing him down, and good finishers will tend to finish time and time again. But Anthony's definitely right. Barcelona is not a team that can just sit back, but it does kind of favor them a little bit in the fact that since PSG has to go for this game, and since Barcelona is much better at building out of the back now that De Jong and Pedri are both healthy, it's a relative back and forth game that I think could end with a lot of goals, again, kind of similar to the first leg. And with PSG having to press and Barcelona having that pace to get in behind, Rafinha obviously had 2 goals in a great game in the first leg. That pace between him and the other winger is going to cause PSG a lot of problems, since they are the ones that have to be aggressive and go for this game. So I do like both teams to score an over 2.5, which is still at a decent price right now. But if you want to chase something, I think over 3.5 at a decent plus number, I think is worth it. Because the reality is, I think this game probably ends in either a stalemate where Barcelona has a good defensive performance, or it just gets completely off the rails. So that's where I'm going on this one.
Yeah, I actually think that the way to play this would be you could do Barcelona to advance, then start rolling something, or if you wanted to bet them to win the tournament. I'm sorry, not Barcelona, PSG, to do that. At plus 320, that's an appealing number. I know they're down a goal, but without the away goals rule, and like you guys say, like there should be some chaos in this match if it goes one direction. Plus, like there's no, you try not to look into like historical narratives, but there's a lot of history with these two teams. It feels like there's going to be something to this one. And if you do believe that, rather than play the 3-way line on PSG or something, I would bet the 2 advance here at plus 320. I think that's fine. I also think backing PSG to win the Champions League, because if they do come back and win this, obviously the path is there for them to get into the final. As Anthony said, Barcelona is a favorite to get into the final right now on that side. So why not take a shot with PSG at plus 450, or if you want plus 1400 to win the tournament. So that's how I would look at it.
Yeah, so this is not a new problem for Barcelona either. I want to kind of point out that this is something that has plagued them against good competition for the most of the Xavi Hernandez era. Because we go back to last year, right? They get the Bayern Inter group that they fail to get out of. Both teams had a ton of success kind of breaking down this Xavi team in transition, even when they were better defensively last year, which they were. And then it never translated quite into Europe. And then they played Man United back when Man United was a competent team. And United really crushed them in transition in both legs and ultimately went through. And remember that second leg, I mean, both legs were chaotic, but the second leg was a 2-1 game where neither team could stop the other because United's defense had really already started to fall off by then. And it just happened that United scored the last goal. And I think that this kind of feels like that. And so, who scores, I don't know. But even if you look at their La Liga numbers right now, Barca looked pretty good in the group this season. But again, that group was not particularly tough with Porto and Shakhtar and Royal Antwerp, two of the 5 or 6 worst teams in the whole tournament. They're 10th in field tilt in Spain, 20th in final third to box entry conversion rate, 9th in set piece defense in La Liga. I mean, it's just not a good enough goal prevention unit to trust them here. So I think PSG is far from out of it. Even if they go down a goal, I don't think they're out of it. I just don't really think Barca is capable of playing without the ball enough to make this work. So sets up for some fun. This one I think will be much more exciting than the other one, but you never know with Dortmund. You never quite know.
Yeah. So let's move on to that one. You never know. You never quite know with Dortmund. What we do know is that they are down 2-1 heading home to Atleti. Dortmund is a plus 125 favorite in this match on the three-way line. Atleti is a plus 210 underdog. The draw here is plus 265. Dortmund plus 195 to advance. Atleti is minus 245. Anthony and myself, we were talking about how we liked Los Colchoneros in the first leg. They get the job done. Not perfectly, I would say, but they get it done. Now they head to Dortmund here. I would still lean towards Simeone's men on the three-way line at this price, but I'm happy just to keep riding with our boys here, BJ.
Yeah, this sets up for just a classic Simeone scenario, right? Of just let's park the bus and let's see this one out. Atletico really did expose a lot of the problems that Dortmund has defensively in that first leg. They did in transition. They played through the middle of the pitch with really good success, and that's what kind of nothing really worries me about Atletico here. I just really, I'd love to get them at plus a half, right? But that's just numbers just not there right now. We'd have to pay, minus 150, minus 155 in that range. And, I have this projected pretty close around to where it is right now. We'll see what kind of Dortmund team we get. There's really never been a Dortmund performance that I've walked away from being like, man, they completely dominated that team, or they really, with their backs against the wall, really came through and actually got it done. Maybe against Bayern Munich when they actually beat them at the Allianz Arena earlier this season, but they got outplayed for most of that match and just got a couple transition attacks. So those transition attacks are not going to be here. And what attackers do Dortmund actually have that can be really good inside the box or really good at breaking down a low block? I don't, outside of Sebastian Haller, I don't really see. Ademi is obviously is a really good transition striker, but all of the guys and the pieces that they have are built to be a good transition offense. They're not going to have that in this scenario. So for me, it's a pass. I know everybody has a Atletico to advance ticket. Just ride that. I probably wouldn't hedge. I would honestly just let it ride. So yeah, for me, it's a pass here. I just don't really see a scenario how Dortmund actually breaks them down. I'm going to stare hard at under 3 for this entire week until the match, or until Tuesday, until it happens. But that's
what's the juice on that right now?
What's that?
What's the juice on that?
It's about minus 120 right now. So
3?
Under 3 is about minus 120. So
that's high.
We'll see. It is high. It is very high. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is just the wall of Simeone. See if it can, stand tall once again.
There's kind of two schools of thought to this for me. Because look, Dortmund essentially handed Atleti 2 goals. If you go back and watch the actual goals, I mean, they could not have better just given the ball away in really high situations. That came from Atleti playing at home, knowing they needed to push the issue to create margin, and playing with a higher line, pushing up the pitch more than you would normally expect Simeone to do in a Champions League match. So my question is, if they, Simeone has two options. The first school of thought is, okay, that really worked. We clearly frazzled them. They're really shitty defensively in possession. They give you the ball a lot. They're going to give us a chance. We might be able to steal one early and put this to bed. The other school of thought is what we traditionally think of Simeone, which is, hey, we can sit deep and we can kind of absorb pressure. And I really don't trust this Dortmund team. If you watch the last 15 minutes of the first leg, I'm Simeone. I don't think you can show up here and park the bus for 90 minutes. I don't think they're good enough defensively. The last 15 minutes, not only did Dortmund score, but they also hit the post in stoppage time, came close on a couple other looks. Like, Dortmund, I think, has enough firepower offensively that if Atleti comes here and tries to play for the 0-0 or even play kind of like we're going to sit off and not really pressure at all, I think it's really dangerous because we saw Inter almost do that defensively in the last 20 to 30 minutes against Atleti and let Atleti back in the tie in a match that Inter had controlled for the first 135 minutes, including the first leg. So there's two ways of looking at this. One, I think live unders are good, kind of like whichever result happens. So if there's an early goal, kind of like the first match where Atleti went up 1-0 in the first minute, you could have grabbed under 3.5. I think if Atleti gets one, you're going to see, first of all, Dortmund, I mean, clearly, yes, they have to push more, but there's a psychological effect of going down like that and kind of feeling out of it against Simeone down 2. And you're going to see Simeone say, hey, we got a 2-goal lead. We're really going to sit really deep, put 10 guys behind the ball. But 3 for me at minus 120 is high. And I know the first leg went over, but again, that was with Dortmund giving away 2 goals. I think they're less likely to do that at home. So at 3, I'm going to bet the under.
How about this? Dortmund under 1.5 is minus 120 right now. That might be the way to go on this scenario. Because like you said, Anthony, basically any school of thought, whether Atletico wants to press high or if they want to sit in their defensive block, I mean, even if they concede one, I can almost guarantee you they're just going to fall back in their defensive block and just look to play in transition. Yeah. So
I like that too. Maybe I'll split it.
Yeah. So maybe that's the scenario we go with here instead of the Dortmund gives away 2 or 3 goals and on the break and just zero in on fading this Dortmund.
O-block masterclass loading.
O-block masterclass. That's right.
Okay, those are the Tuesday games. Let's move on to the Wednesday ones. Before we do, a reminder that Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and now North Carolina. Or you need to be 18 and older in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem or know anyone who does and needs help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, Wednesday now. Man City, buoyant after the fortress crumbled, after Arsenal lost.
Two fortresses crumbled.
Two fortresses crumbled. We'll see if a third one does on Monday at Stamford Bridge. But for now, our focus will be on City as a minus 160 favorite on the 3-way line against Real Madrid. Real Madrid is plus 400 here. The draw is plus 330. These two teams are knotted up 3-3. The 2 advance line, nonetheless, is minus 310 for City and plus 235 for Real Madrid, which seems absolutely bonkers.
I agree.
Real Madrid is really good. I know City is really good, but Real Madrid is too. Which I guess kind of leads to where I'm going here. I think you can bet Madrid whatever your favorite way is. I am not going to give you advice one way or the other. I think if you want to bet them to win on the 3-way line, I think if you want them to bet them to win to advance, however you want to do it, you go for it because I think that the numbers are there for you to do so. This looks like a little bit of an overreaction from the events which transpired over this past weekend. I think there was I think maybe the first time in the history of our podcast that we looked back and gave our thoughts on something that happened retrospectively to start off a show. But I gave Anthony the blessing to do so because I think it actually matters in this case for projecting out the City and Real Madrid match, which is, it feels like everyone's now thinking that this is going to be a City walkabout to 3 different titles, and that is bleeding into the market. We know that Madrid they'll be ready to go here. Like, we're not talking about Dortmund coming in or whoever. Like, this is a team that can absolutely take it to City. That the 3-3 game was insane. It kind of showed you that you can absolutely you can lose to Real Madrid in so many different ways, and they were kind of all on display at various points in that first leg. So I don't know. I think that this City line looks way out of whack here, and I'd be happy to take a shot on Real Madrid, Anthony.
So I'm hoping we get more City money, because if this gets to 1, I'm going to take Real Madrid. And I can't believe I'm saying that. It's like it like hurt to say those words come out of my mouth. But I mean, the first leg, so De Bruyne doesn't play, which I think is kind of the most important thing we have to consider. You know, he gets sick. He doesn't start. And did that change what City wanted to do? And how much did that affect their ability to create chances? Because really, like, I know they scored 3 goals, and it's silly for me to sit here and say, hey, you know, the team that scored 3 goals really didn't play that well. But they really didn't. And I rewatched large portions of the first half where, you know, City scores from a Silva free kick, and City scores on a Foden 25-yard screamer, and then Gvardiol panic shot it, and it went into the corner. So all of those things happen, and City gets 3 goals, and we say, oh, what a great job by City. I thought there were way more opportunities where City's defense was in peril / getting stretched / being pushed by Rodrigo, Vinicius, and Bellingham than the other side. I thought Real Madrid's defense did really well in limiting City's kind of deep penetration into the penalty area. The problem, though, is that Tchouaméni's now out, and De Bruyne is probably back. And that's the 2 things that scare me from saying, hey, like, Real Madrid is live here. That's why I want the full goal protection on Real Madrid, because I do think City could squeak this win. It wouldn't shock me if they're rightful favorites. Of course, they're at home. They're the treble winners. But this Real Madrid defense is really better. And that was always my thing with them in the past. The past Real Madrid teams played no defense. It was YOLO ball. It was Courtois is going to be amazing. We're going to out-vibes you. And Leboff made a ton of money against us, kind of betting them and winning on vibes. But this Real Madrid team actually defends, and they actually are giving up. I said this on last week's pod. They're giving up like 0.78 XG per 90 in Spain the last 2 months. And you know, there was a lot made of the struggles against Leipzig and how they kind of were even with Leipzig over 2 legs. And I think that's notable. But it wasn't because the defense struggled. They only gave up 2.2 XG over 2 matches to Leipzig. It's not bad. It was because the attack was bad. And remember that Bellingham didn't play the first leg against Leipzig, and in the second leg, they didn't play a striker. They kind of just sat really deep, and it was like a weird performance. They tactically was kind of off, and they were kind of getting booed in their home ground. But, you know, when they have those 3 guys and they have a really solid defense, it's just a much more solid team all around to actually have a go at City. And they did kind of have a go in the first meeting too. They weren't just sitting really deep and countering. They actually kind of like forced some mistakes with City in their possession and turned them over and then ran at them. And so City's defense, they'll let you have the ball. And now teams that have the ability and the talent like Real Madrid to exploit it, we're able to find success. I don't think this City team is going to do what last year's City team did at home. I know the first leg ended up in a draw just like last year, but I don't think, after watching that first match, that this City team is about to press and smush Real Madrid in Manchester on Wednesday. And I think the market kind of thinks that.
I totally agree. I mean, this is something that we've been saying for a while, that City's just not as good out of possession as they've been in years past. You know, I've read through the stats before the Luton Town match where they were basically average in all the pressing stats that matter in the Premier League. And the problem is that, you know, structurally how City set up this season as opposed to a season before, you know, last season they had Gundogan. a guy who could crash the box, get forward. Rodri could actually sit deep and play more of the defensive midfielder role and that ball stopping role. Whereas now they don't have that box crashing midfielder, and Rodri has to be the one that does that. And what we know about Real Madrid is that they are best when they can just sit off the ball passively and then just counter you. When City is committing that many guys forward to try and create an overload, it creates 3v3 situations. And that happened a lot in the first leg. And if you're going 3v3 versus Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., and Rodrigo, I don't care who you are, you're screwed. Like that's about as deadly as it gets going in transition. And I think the thing that was very evident in the first leg is that Haaland got completely neutralized. Like he had 18 touches in total, 4 in the penalty box, and 1 shot. Like Real Madrid had a really good game plan on how to stop him. And like Anthony said, like City hit a bunch of screamers, and you just kind of have to live with that. But
your cap.
Yeah, it went both ways. It was a
That's what I did,
fest, right? And so
I was on Green Dot Daily with Sean Kerner. We did a live at 3 right when the game kicked, and I had a separate stream up. And if you go back and watch, you can see me just shake my head a couple times because it was already 1-1 by the time I got off the call. And I'm like, well, under 2.5 might not make it very much longer at this point.
Exactly.
That being said, 3 again for this one.
I know.
Now, here's the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing I'll say, because I do like Real Madrid to advance here, is that, when you can play passively and play a good defensive block, like Real Madrid can, like they can just sit off this. They don't have to go for anything early on here. And with City taking only 12 shots in the previous meeting, with only 4 of those actually coming inside the penalty area, like Anthony said, Real Madrid can repeat that defensive performance the exact same way here in this leg and then have those opportunities in transition. So this number's crazy. I don't care what anybody says. City's not as good as they were last year. And I don't care if just, and obviously De Bruyne does make a difference, but I don't think he makes that much of a difference to the point, like you said, Anthony, where the market thinks they're just going to be as good as they were last year. So Real Madrid to advance for me.
So that's part of the thing that I'm like a little bit leaning toward the under again. I mean, if it's 3 minus 110, I'm going to play it again. The thing about City, right? So they don't press, and they're not as good at it. Some of it is a choice. Like they sit off more, and they're more conservative to try to protect their back line. What is Kyle Walker's status? Because I think that's really important here, because it was very evident to me that they were getting stretched up the same wing over and over again. And that's the area where Vinicius operates and the area where Kyle Walker usually operates, but didn't in the first leg. So I think, the update is that he's probably not going to play. So as a result, I'm kind of a little more hesitant on City's defense, even if they're going to sit off a little more, not press. Like you don't have your best speed demon stopper, Vinicius stopper on the one side. But then on the other side, do they have to attack with as much if De Bruyne is there? Because De Bruyne makes up for so much of like the whole thing where Foden can't get forward as much when De Bruyne is not there, because Foden has to do what De Bruyne does, and then everything kind of gets weird from there. So I kind of think City without Walker and with De Bruyne is going to be about as conservative as they can be to avoid transition and then to say, hey, look, like we just trust De Bruyne to do some magic with Grealish or with Foden or with Haaland, and say, hey, like we don't need to attack with anyone else because we're so deathly afraid. So we're not going to press. We're not going to attack. We're going to turn this into a stalemate, which again, I mean, still kind of favors Real if you think about it playing out that way. So if you go back and look, City hit them early. It was an early turnover that led to the first goal in the first match. In the second leg last year, without it, I think this plays out under 3 pretty comfortably. Like it really, unless you get the early goal, this game is very stalematy.
Yeah, and probably no John Stones as well, which is also very important for City of how they actually want to build out, because he is the one that actually inverts in the midfield, and with Akanji being questionable as well. It's not good for City.
I think Rico Lewis starts. That's my prediction. Because I think they need the pace. They need the true fullback to try to run with Vinicius. Otherwise, it's really dangerous. And I know Lieboff is like about to shed a tear because we're all backing Real Madrid here for the first time in like pod history. I don't think we've all ever bet Real
Don
Madrid.
Carlo. No, I would be the only one
same
doing
time.
it. And then you guys would just come on the next week and be like, that was a stupid game. And then they'd win the title, and you'd be like, that was.
And I hope we come on and say, man, that was a stupid game, and thank God Real Madrid won.
Yeah, just the tournament. I mean, we're going to talk so much about the Euros, and that it's really hard to do as someone who, when you're covering betting, but you just have to consider the format of a competition. I think, and there are teams and coaches that just do such a good job at it.
Don Carlo.
Don Carlo is one of them.
I mean, look, if you, I don't, we don't, March Madness, so much of the discussion is like, this coach is ATS 41% against the spread historically. I mean, if you did like an ATS historically, I don't know, we don't have the numbers. If you did ATS Champions League historically, Guardiola would probably be, who's the Guardiola comp in men's college basketball? Is it like Rick Barnes? I don't even know. But like he would rank pretty poorly because it feels like City gets these lofty power ratings from dominating leagues, and then they just kind of always, generally come up short. And look, there are exceptions, but even the final last year, I can't tell you how many people were like, you're crazy for betting Inter. They have no chance against City. They're going to get their doors kicked in. And then it was like an even match.
The whole first half.
Large stretches. And even the Chelsea match. No way Chelsea can beat City again 3 times in one season. No way. And then they outplayed them too. So like we've seen Guardiola not be the greatest tournament coach.
Yeah.
And some of it is bad luck, obviously.
Yeah, but it makes
any
sense.
soccer match.
When you think about the preparation and stuff, so much is devoted to I think rhythms of a season and when you're in a tournament all over Europe, it throws that off. So I think there's some credence to that. All right, let's wrap things up with Arsenal and Bayern in Germany. Great scenes in the Bundesliga today with Bayer Leverkusen winning their first title. I think I've told you guys this, but I did a little bit of work for Bayer Leverkusen about a decade ago, so I feel like I deserve a little bit of credit, or I get my name on the cup here. So, congrats to my former employers. Bayern.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Lieboff. Here's the fun fact: Lieboff also ran for mayor.
I did. Yeah. That was a little bit after I ran for mayor before I worked for Bayer Leverkusen, but I'm not kidding. I did. Anyways,
man of many hats.
Yeah. And yet here I am. Bayern is at home, and they are a plus 140 favorite. It's pretty close here. It's 2-2, by the way, on the scoreline. I should have mentioned that off the top. Arsenal plus 180 on the road. Draw plus 275 to advance. Flip a coin, basically, between these two. It's essentially a pick'em, as close as you can get to a pick'em when you're getting to this stage of the Champions League. Bayern is a nominal favorite at minus 125. I like Arsenal here.
I do too.
It's another situation where I think you can bet them any way you want. 3-way line to advance. Go back to Anthony's special and bet them to win the tournament again. I think however you want to do it, you can bet them here. And I know that sounds like a bad time to get involved because they've just they've had a couple wobbles two matches in a row. But I think that's why I like it, because I think that there's some skepticism in the market on Arsenal for the first time in weeks. So we'll save you for the end here, BJ. Anthony, you're off the bandwagon? You're done? You're cashing out your Arsenal futures?
No. Look, I've always backed Arsenal in this tournament. I've always felt good about them. BJ's gagging as I say that. They're still an elite defensive team. They gave up 2 late goals today. Sure. I say this every week. My questions about Arsenal have never been the defense, and they still aren't. I think Bayern did some really interesting things in the first leg. They got Sane to cook Kiwior a couple of times. They really found success with transitions that we hadn't really seen a lot of teams do against Arsenal, which was concerning on one hand, but also like even the first goal felt like Arsenal just kind of gave the ball away high on like a random bad pass. That probably doesn't happen again. But I also don't think Arsenal created a ton of chances in the second half. Like I thought the second half, when they were down a goal and Bayern sat off a little more, There wasn't a lot of chance creation. So the interesting thing is, who has more of the ball in this game? Because we've seen Arsenal be good in the kind of the City role, where the City match role, where they say, all right, you have the ball. We'll wait for our transition moments. We don't really have a striker anyway, so we'd kind of rather play that style where we get to play on the break and we have good passers and we have good runners in behind. Does Arsenal give possession to Bayern and say, hey, when you lose the ball, we know we can hit you, and that's where we're going to win this game? I think that might be the best way for Arsenal to go about this, because I think if Arsenal goes to Bayern on the road and tries to replicate last week and then just say, hopefully we don't screw up a couple times and give them golden opportunities at our goal, on the road at Bayern in this Champions League setting, that feels like we're sitting here on Saturday saying, or our next episode saying, Arsenal choked again. They made those 2 bad passes. Bayern capitalized. Bayern had the experience. They had the guts to pull out this close tie. And so I think it's very interesting on who has the ball. Now, as anybody who listens to the show know, we are very leveraged on Arsenal. I am not adding more to my position. I'm very comfortable. We had such a good bet pre-flop here that even after a home draw, we're still sitting with basically the same bet on Arsenal to advance, minus 115. They're like minus 105 now because that market moved so far toward Arsenal. Bayern having Sané, I didn't think they'd have him for the first leg. So them having him was a huge difference. But even still, Arsenal, for most of that match, were the better team. And I think they're still the better team. And I think the market's probably about right, but I still tilt toward Arsenal because I trust their defense way more. So that's where I feel about this. I'm not adding more to it, though. We ride. Please bring us home, Gunners, because our other tickets are looking decent right now.
Yeah, so I'll say this. It wasn't the greatest offensive performance from Arsenal in that first leg, but they did an outstanding job of controlling the match. If you look at the stats from it, Arsenal had a 73% field tilt. They doubled the amount of final third touches as Bayern did. And like Anthony said, what really happened was Bayern just capitalized on the few transition moments they got where Arsenal made mistakes, which has been uncharacteristic of Arsenal this season. And even again today against Aston Villa, Aston Villa did nothing the entire first half, and then it was just one mistake where Gabriel passed it off his own guy, and Ollie Watkins got a shot that went off the post. But other than that, they didn't do anything. And that's what kind of lands me on this line where it's yes, I know Bayern has home field advantage, but we're kind of rating these teams like they're similar, which I don't think is true. I think Bayern is a significantly worse defensive team. And there's something else happening with Bayern. Tuchel has frozen out Upamecano and Kim Min-jae, and he's gone with an Eric Dyer De Ligt center back pairing basically since around the beginning of February. Which, if you know anything about De Ligt and Dyer, they are mistake-prone center backs, especially in possession. And since those two have been the center back pairing, Bayern is allowing 1.26 expected goals per 90 minutes. Before that time, before they were, when it was Kim Min-jae and Upamecano, they were only allowing 0.83. So that's a pretty significant difference in terms of just the center back pairing right there. So to Anthony's point, Arsenal, yes, could definitely go to the Allianz Arena, and they could just sit off because Arsenal is elite, whether it be in rest defense or in that transition type mode. And what Arsenal does just so well and so much better than everybody else in terms of defensively is once they lose the ball, they get back and they get numbers behind the ball, and they make it very, very difficult for you to break in transition. So if Bayern is going to go here with the game plan of okay, you know what, that kind of worked in the first leg. Let's give Arsenal the ball and let's try to break against them. Relying on just a few transition opportunities against a defense as good as Arsenal's is not something that's sustainable. You can win with it. You can definitely pick them off a couple times, and we could be sitting here being man, just like what happened in the first leg. But I think another point is pretty substantial in this second leg is that Alphonso Davies is suspended. And he did a really good job against Saka in 1v1 situations in that first leg. And now it's probably going to be Rafael Guerreiro, who's a wonderful progressive left back and great at creating chances. But he's not good in this role of let's just sit in a defensive block and let's defend for the entire match. So And even the first goal that Saka had, it came off of Arsenal getting an overload in the wide area, and it freed up Saka, and he made his nice little cut, and he scored. So if Davies is not going to be there and Arsenal is going to continue to get those overloads, like that is a path where Arsenal can score. And, I think Arsenal definitely has to start Martinelli on the left. I don't think starting Trossard is the right move here. They got to start Kiwior again. I know that he got cooked a couple times, but Zinchenko is a horrible replacement in that terms from what I've seen the last few matches with Zinchenko in there. So I would prefer Arsenal to just go back to their big game lineup, which is Havertz up top, Martinelli, Saka, 4 center backs across the back line. And I think Arsenal has a great path, whether they want to control this match or they want to give Bayern possession. I think that they can control this match either in possession or out of possession. And I think they're a superior team to Bayern. So I like them to advance. If you already have an Arsenal to advance ticket, just ride it. Like, I'm not doubling down here. But if you're somebody who's coming in here who didn't bet that, Arsenal's even money to advance. And I think that they should be closer around to -115, -120.
Should be a fun one. It's the one that I'm most excited for because I really am most uncertain of how it will look. I kind of have a feeling on the other, like we can kind of generally think the other three will play out, but this one, I think the Arsenal has 2 very different ways of going to Munich, and which one will tell us a lot about Arteta. Even I think it's the biggest match of his career at this point in Arsenal because a loss here and like. They don't
sees as a failure.
They don't win the league.
Failure.
I hate rings culture. I hate trophy culture. I think it's like really lame. Arsenal had an incredible season, regardless of how the next 5 weeks go. But I am not the majority of people, so there's going to be a lot said if they don't win the league, which they're probably not going to, and if they don't win the Champions League, which they're probably not going to, even though I think they will. That there's going to be a lot of discussion, especially if they lose to this Bayern team. Again, a Bayern team that gets pantsed regularly in Germany and has almost fired their manager 3 times in the last 2 months and is already, he's essentially coaching fired. So losing to him would almost be as bad as when Tottenham lost to the manager who was in jail.
Okay.
Which I will never forget as long as I'm a soccer fan. You know that story, BJ?
I do know that story. I think I told you that story.
It was pre-podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was pre-podcast. It was when Tottenham was
in the spring of 2021. They had a Europa League tie. I forget who they played, but it was one of the Eastern European. It was Dinamo Zagreb. The coach got arrested for fraud, and the team won the match against Tottenham like 2 days later. So that was that. That is the ultimate interim manager bounce. The coach got arrested. You got to rally around him, beat Tottenham. It was Mourinho's Tottenham, too, if I recall correctly. So that made it even funnier.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the report. Mourinho could be coming back to the Premier League and in London even.
West Ham?
Yeah.
Perfect.
He'd be perfect for them.
That is diabolically good.
That'd be perfect.
All right. Quickly, let's just wrap up. Anything on the Europa League for you, BJ?
Yeah, Roma, AC Milan, under 2.5. It's around -105 right now. Roma, obviously, Mourinho's gone, but there's still some semblances of him in the squad and how they play. Like, they're not this new age, let's build out of the back, let's press high type of team. Like, they're still going to come here in the second leg and play a lower defensive block, which is what they did after going up early against AC Milan. They essentially they scored, parked the bus, and just absorbed a ton of shots. AC Milan had 25 shots, but only created 1.6 expected goals. It was incredibly inefficient. There were not really any big chances they created. So I think you're going to see Roma have the exact same game plan here, being at home and just trying to see this one out. So, and even, the Roma matches under De Rossi have been chaotic to start out, but the matches were vastly outperforming all the expected goals that were created. And now you're seeing kind of a turn more towards what it should have been. So I think this total is still a little high, projected around 1.9 goals for this match. So like under 2.5 goals at -105.
Anything for you, Anthony?
Yeah, I don't know how West Ham defends Leverkusen.
Well, Leverkusen could be drunk.
They could. That's the championship hangover is real. They're holding a 2-goal lead. They're going on the road. West Ham is going to have to open up. And they're not even a good defense when they sit in their low block. They're even worse when they've opened up this year. Leverkusen has Boniface back now. They have a system that is well designed to wreck teams in transition. I'm going to be looking at some Leverkusen like upset alts in some way, shape, or form here because I really don't see a path for West Ham getting back into this, even at home, without some voodoo magic. The dream spot, Leboff, I mentioned it last week on the show. I said I would love to bet Atalanta plus 3/4 at home against Liverpool, which I think is what the line's going to be. Well, sure enough, Liverpool's laying 3/4 of a goal, but I did not expect a 3-goal aggregate lead going back to Bergamo. So I'm not going to bet it. I'm going to say that we're going to pass. And
Fortress Anfield.
Fortress Anfield.
Atalanta did the first.
Well, it doesn't count in it's only
Yeah,
Premier
no,
League.
there are stipulations, BJ.
There's all stipulations. Also, Palace doesn't count because they're notorious upset.
Bogey,
also, Elise and Eze played, so it wasn't really
not
Palace.
Yeah,
it was basically 2000.
Right, it's not fair. I get it.
Palace, when they have Eze and Elise, are basically 2011 Barca, so it doesn't really count. But I do like Lille if you're not invested in the future. I think they're live to turn that around against Villa. They were the better team in the first leg in the Conference League, out-created them. Field tip was pretty even. Now they come home. They're like laying a little more than even money. Like it's not quite a pick 'em, but it's not quite a quarter goal. It's between the two. I think Lille's going to turn this tie. I think Villa just got a huge win themselves, upset against Arsenal. Now they go to France. And I think Lille, like I said, the same thing before the first leg. Lille has the possession and they have the pace in behind to give problems to Villa. So I think they're plenty live to turn this around. If you want to add more, if you're not invested, or if you are, honestly, I'm fine with it too. I think Lille's going to turn this, and I think we're not too far from the 3 tickets in the semis. So I'm starting to get a little excited, although I know one of them's going down this week. So hopefully Atalanta and Lille can come through.
And to echo that, I like the over in that match as well, which is over 2.5 at about -125.
I'm excited to see what Liverpool looks like Thursday because it's a really weird spot because they're not out of the title race. They're only 2 points back.
What's the excuse, Michael, when Liverpool loses again from Klopp?
They didn't have any. They had no excuses this week.
I know. He said he goes. He told the media basically like, don't talk to me. I need to digest this after today.
I mean, the Atalanta match
to figure out what to blame
was legitimately shocking defense today. I mean, how many times are you going to be at point blank range and kick the ball right at the goalie? Or miss or hit the post? I mean, that was shocking from Liverpool. But
yeah, well, Atalanta they went straight man to man everywhere.
Man to man,
they just manned up and they beat them. It was crazy.
They beat them. Yeah, Van Dijk even commented on how it was a system they weren't. They were
rarely
surprised by
that nowadays. Teams don't really go man to man like all over. There's usually some type of hybrid system, and Atalanta just said no. We're going straight man to man against Liverpool,
and teams don't ever do that against Liverpool.
They don't. If you want to know why, go look at the Luton Town Man City FA Cup match. Luton Town tried to go man to man, and Holland had 5 goals in under an hour. Like that's what happens when you try to go man to man against really good attacking teams. But credit to Atalanta.
Gianpiero Gasparini.
Ishak Hine, look out for that name because he's put up a couple great defensive performances against Osimhen when they played Napoli, now against Liverpool and Nunez. Like he plays for, I know that Sweden's not in the Euros unfortunately, so but yeah, look out for him. He might be next $50 million center back.
All right, that'll do it for this Champions League preview. We will be back, of course, in your feed on Thursday morning to look ahead to the upcoming Premier League schedule. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you to anyone who's rated, reviewed, and subscribed to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Noah, and, of course, to our sponsors, Bet365.